I'm going to try to make a simpler video about testing. So I'm only going to do a single class. I've created the class here. It's called Class Customer. It has an init. It takes a self, an ID, a name, an email, and rewards. And I've assigned each of those to a local variable. That's what the self does. So that they each have a value. I did gets for the fields. Get ID, get name, get self, email, get rewards. I added a couple of other things. I added an add reward and a use rewards method, and I cast them to int to make sure that they were integer. Alright, so those are both integers, and then the add reward adds the points, and the use reward subtracts them. I also created a string method for the class that calls return the name and the email. I could make it more complex, but the more complex you make it, the harder it is to test. Alright, so down here, this it doesn't matter, but I just showed you how here I created an instance of the class. We imported it. We made an instance of the class. I cast it to string, and it showed that the string function works. That's not exactly testing yet, but that's where I just wanted to make sure those things worked. So that's our class, a customer class. It's very similar to a class that a lot of you have made. So I am going to add, and this is all in Visual Studio Code, but you can do it in any IDE. I am going to create a testing class, and I'm going to call it test.py. You actually want to call it test.py or something very similar. Okay, so I am going to go there. We're in test.py. So a couple of things I'm going to do here. First, I'm going to import unit test. All right, because we need unit test. And then I'm going to say from customer, this is the file name, import customer with a cap .py, or just customer. That should work. All right, for the test, I need to create a class. I'm going to say test customer, and it inherits from unit test. Unit test dot, and what we want is test case. All right, so we're creating a class that inherits from test case. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to initialize an example that the tests will use. So I'm going to call this class setup with a capital P. This is actually what it expects for a setup. So you really want to do this exactly this way when you set up the class. And what I'm going to do is I am going to C equals, we're going to make a new customer instance, and the customer takes, notice it imported all right because it takes the ID, which I'm going to do as 123, the name, which I will do as, oh, I don't know, Brett Brown. Okay. Then I need to enter an email. So it's going to be bb@gmail.com. And I am going to do a comma and add their reward points at 100. Now, for this to work, I need to do self.c. You need to make sure that it belongs to the class. All right. So I'll do the first test. We'll do a first couple of tests, and I'll do they're pretty simple. So it is really important that these be called test underscore, and what I'm going to do is test ID. All right, and it'll take the self argument. And I am going to basically just do self assert, and what we want to do is assert equal. We're going to say these two things are equal, and I'm going to say self.c, which is the name of our local instance of the class, dot, and we can do, if I go up here, there's get ID, do parentheses because it's a method, and I'm going to say that it equals 1, 2, 3. Okay, so let's try that first test. So I'm going to come down here. I'm going to go to the command palette, and I am going to configure tests. And there we find it, configure tests. It's unit test. It's in the root directory, and we do test underscore, so we do that. And let's see if it finds any tests. I need to save it. Alright, so I'm going to go down to tests. I'm going to run that. Is it going to find them? No tests ran. Let's go back and reconfigure, because I think I probably messed that up. Python configure test, unit test, the root directory, and here we just want test.py. There, it found them. You can tell because it puts the run tests. And then if I run the test, now notice there's this icon down here with the beaker, that's the test one. I'm going to run it, and the one test I have passed. You can tell because of the green check mark. Alright, and down here it has the check marks. So I'm going to do just a couple more of those. These are really the simple tests, and if you only end up with these, so I'm going to do like test underscore name, and there's a couple of ways. So I'm going to, and then we'll do self, oops, and we will basically do the self, and you can do assert equal. Notice there's lots of other things you can assert, and if you're getting really sophisticated, you can check on those things. I'm going to assert equal, and I am going to do self.c dot get name, and you can either enter the literal name here, or you could say c.name, but let's do, I'm going to do the literal name here. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to paste it here, just to keep any typos out. So we have that. Again, I need to save. I'm going to do Control S to save. And if we test, okay, both of them passed, right? And if I do this, test customer passed, and you can, over here you can debug them. You can also run them one at a time by just clicking on this run test. All right, so you could do this for the email and this, and it would work just fine. This is the pattern. So let's test. So I'm going to comment this because I'll post this. And then I'm going to basically it's just say test the get methods, and I'm not going to do all of them because they're all the same. They're just basically this pattern. So let's test the add, test the rewards, and I'm going to do a few here. Again, if you just test your gets, if that's all you have, that would be fine for the assignment. But I'm going to test the rewards one. So I'm going to do def test underscore add reward, and we'll do self. Okay. And I'm going to call the method where we add rewards. So I'm going to do self.c add reward, and let's add 50. And then we're going to say self assert equal self or c self c get rewards, and we're going to assume it should be 150. Is that correct? So we'll save again. Okay, and let's run just this one test. So it didn't like it. Let's look at a debug. Alright, what is it not? Let's try run testing, look in the debug. It's not really doing it. So what is it getting if it's not 100? We're adding a reward of 50. We had an original of 100, so it should be 150. Add reward 50. Get rewards. I don't know why that one isn't working. I want some more. So it opens there. Self add reward 50. I want the error messages here. These can be self C add reward 50. Self assert equals self get rewards. We should return 150. Why is it not? I'm going to use the interactive thing down here. I'm going to do C dot add reward 50. Let's look at customer add reward. You know what I failed at? In the class, these two things need self. They need the self argument. I forgot those. Something I do a lot with Python. So I'll save this, and then I'll come back to the test, and I'll run this test again, and now it passes. So you see that actually by testing I found an error that I could fix. I had forgot the self there. It's a little bit difficult to see the error, and I know there's a way to make the error display. Alright, so that worked now, once I fixed that. And then I can do one other, just def, oops, this is still the class. Let's go back to test.py. So we're going to do def test use reward. and it'll be pretty close to this. So I'm just going to copy that. Except instead of add reward, I'm going to say use reward. And is it use reward or use rewards? Use rewards. Okay, and then we should say that it should be 50 now. It goes off the original number. It doesn't record the change there. So let's save this. So did I save it? Why is it not saving now? Does it have an error? Test customer, test ID, test route, test self. Oh. Any error will interfere. So there it is. So now if I run all the tests, they all pass. And you can look down here and it shows that each of them passed. I want to run 2 other little tests, and then we'll be done with this. So I just want to show you that you can do something. So I'm going to do test, and we're going to say add reward to, and we'll just do self. And so we'll add a reward. Self C dot add reward, and we'll do 50 again. And I'm going to assert something different. Self assert greater. And then what I'm going to do is say that C dot get self C dot get rewards is going to be greater than 100. Let's see if that test passes. So I'm going to save it. I'm going to just run this one test, and it also passed. Just to show you that it meant that it did add something to it. One other test I'm going to check is just to see if it's the cast to int works. So it's going to be test add rewards 3. Okay, not sure about my naming conventions. So I'm going to do this. And then I'm going to assert. So except I'm going to add 50.5. And I'm just going to assert self. This one will be just an assert equal again. self.c dot get rewards, and I'm going to assert that it's 150, just a straight integer. Okay, I'm going to save all of this, and I'll run this last test, and that worked. So all of these are good. I've got one other test I'm going to do, and then this will be it. I'm going to test class string method. So def test, I'm going to call it toString. Self. All right. Self assert equal. So we're going to say string self C. So we're casting the class to string, and we're going to say that it is equal to, and I'm going to copy from down here. Yeah. I don't know if it'll let me copy from down there. Oh, it did. Good. So again, I'll save. And then I'll run this last test. It didn't like it. So notice the exclamation points here. What did it not like about it? So lynnjoneslg.com. No, that's good. Let's see if I can find the debug on this. I'm not going to do that. Oh, we have the debug here. Oh, Brett Brown. Yeah. Where did Lynn Jones come from? It's Brett Brown at BBG. Now let's try the test. So this test ran, and it passed now. Alright, so I'm going to post all this code, and hopefully that helped a little bit. You can see how I had to play with it a bit, but this is you import the unit test, you import the class, you create a testing class, and it has a test case. You have a setup where you create an instance of the class that you're testing. This can be a problem if you have a class embedded in a class, because then you'll need to import all of those classes. I went through and I tested the ID and the name. I could test for the email, and the points would be exactly the same. I added a reward. I used a reward. I saw if the amount after it was added, if it was greater than the original amount. You could do also with this thing is make sure it's less than. I also made sure that the integer works. And then I tested the string for the class. I'll put these on the blog and I'll make a link to that. And then this video I think is done.